Welcome back. We have Bandana Carr here with AI, APIs, and the confessions of a teenage hacker.
Hi, I'm Vandana. I hope my presentation is visible, otherwise, I'm totally embarrassing myself. Hi, I'm 17 and I hack APIs and AI models for a living. I'm a security research engineer at a cybersecurity firm called AppySec, where my job there is to make and break APIs. Independently, I'm researching adversarial attacks on large language models so your APIs don't have to cry themselves to sleep. And also, recently I started as a board member at the United Nations Dynamic Team Coalition, which is a part of the Internet Governance Forum. Now, I make and break APIs and AI models, and occasionally I forget to have lunch. So, today we're here to talk about how that became my life, and I'm also going to give you some actionable tips on getting started in cybersecurity and my journey in cybersecurity. So, this is the story of what happens when a 13-year-old watches too many tech movies. So, like a lot of people who are 12 to 13, I was introduced to tech by social media, particularly Instagram. And I had an adverse experience there. And to be more specific, I was cyberbullied when I was 13. And like every emotionally sane and stable 13-year-old, after getting cyberbullied, my first decision was to start competitive programming. Kidding, actually. The year was 2020, and we had online classes in 2020. And I was too lazy to wake up and actually join the classes. So, my first ever project was a Zoom bot that I made in Python that would that would help me skip the classes and I would just sleep through them. So that's actually what got me into tech. But I wasn't always coding for convenience. I later shifted my focus to something a bit more productive and fruitful, which was competitive programming. And I got hooked onto competitive programming to the point where I was on Geeks for Geeks, I was on Hacker Rank, I was participating on challenges on Code Chef, and I used to participate in all of these different programming challenges and I learned data structures and algorithms. And my goal in life was pretty clear, to be a software engineer. But the thing is, that didn't play out really well for me, and I kind of lost my charm with competitive programming. But shifting the focus back to you a little bit, do you need to learn how to code to get into cybersecurity? The answer is absolutely not. There's plenty of cybersecurity roles that don't require you to be a code geek like me. For example, there's governance, risk compliance, there's cybersecurity marketing roles. Even in the more like C-suite cybersecurity roles, you don't need to be a hands-on coder. And actually, I would say some of the higher paid cybersecurity roles don't actually require coding skills. But the thing is, I like to talk a lot about myself. So I'm going to talk about myself again. And I'm going to continue the story of how I got into tech. So after I was done skipping classes and stuff and getting into competitive programming, I joined Instagram, of course, and I was really fascinated by how somebody's pictures could be geolocated. Because I read a blog about it and I was like, wow, I want to try that. And I'm going to geolocate my friends. So I would just sit there and I would just sit there and geolocate my friends' pictures on Instagram in a totally non creepy way. And I'm not talking about the sort of geolocation where you take out metadata from a picture and stuff. I learned reverse image lookups, and there's lots of different OSINT techniques that I learned. And I got pretty decent at it to the point where I was able to geolocate this exquisite picture of a pothole that somebody shared on Twitter. Now, I've yapped a lot about OSINT here, but what is OSINT actually? Now, OSINT is a pretty sweet field in cybersecurity, and open source intelligence is the art of gathering data from publicly available sources like there's Google, there's social media platforms, there's geospatial data. You gather all that data and you analyze it to produce actionable intelligence. And that whole process is called open source intelligence. Now, there's plenty of career paths in open source intelligence that you can take if you're somebody who's a really nosy person, or if you're a mild cyber stalker like me. So if you are somebody like me, you can definitely get into OSINT and make a real world impact, because I know there's a lot of law enforcement agencies that hire OSINT folks, and there's a really there's a really noble organization called the National Child Protection Task Force. So what people do there is they hire volunteers who use open source intelligence to geolocate missing people. And that just goes to show what an impact the OSINT industry has on the world. Now, I've yapped a lot about how I used to skip classes by coding and how I used to geolocate my friends and do all these like morally gray stuff. But where were my parents in all of this? Because I was 13 and 14 when I did all of this stuff. So you might be wondering what role my parents played here. But the thing is, they had absolutely no idea. So I was in the eighth grade when I started learning how to code, and up until mid 11th grade, they had no idea I was learning coding, competitive programming, cybersecurity, anything. Eventually, I got into CTFs as well. As the previous speaker mentioned, I would just like to clarify what CTFs are. So, capture the flag challenges are basically simulated machines that you sort of get on platforms like TryHackMe or Hack the Box. And what you do is you hack into them and you retrieve flags from them, submit them onto the platform, and you get some sort of like points or reward for it. So it's a really great way to like start learning cybersecurity and hacking. And I got started in CTFs really young. So I started on TryHackMe. But the thing is, CTFs are not really close to real life scenarios, which was something that I realized the hard way. But the thing is, capture the flag challenges teach you how to think like an attacker. And that's what's really important in cybersecurity, because tools and techniques and scripts and languages, everything is changing, especially in the era of AI and everything is changing. But what's not going to change is that hacker mindset that you need to have if you're going to be in cybersecurity. But getting back to my story, so my parents had no idea I was doing anything even mildly tech related. They thought I was just, I was just gonna study physics, chemistry, and maths, and probably just do a bachelor's in technology, and just a very cookie cutter Indian girl kind of path. But the day my dad found out was he accidentally saw my LinkedIn profile. And a couple of days after that, I actually had a podcast scheduled. So my grand reveal was actually a podcast promotion video that I showed to my parents that, hey, your daughter is into cybersecurity and she's not going to be giving all of these Indian competitive like exams and stuff. But so getting to my point, my confession here is that I was mildly ungrateful for the support that my parents had for me. And I had really underestimated how much my parents love me. Because, like, in India, like, I'm getting a little personal here, but in India, every parent's dream is that their child just like performs good in academics. I was average at academics. And I kind of shattered their dream in that sense. But the thing is, even though they don't understand one single thing of what I do in cybersecurity, my mom is my biggest supporter, and my dad could not be more proud of me. So, to those of you who are learning cybersecurity, it's like a genuine piece of advice is to really just show gratitude to the background team that you have. And yeah, now that we're getting a little emo, let's continue my story into tech with confession number 4. I apped to Indian government CISOs on open source intelligence. So, as I mentioned, I got pretty decent at open source intelligence. And like I geolocated that pothole, I would make little write ups on, well, hey, I geolocated my friend's house and this is how I did it. Well, it turns out somebody really significant within the Indian government actually happened to read one of my write ups. So she invited me as a guest lecturer to Indian government CISOs on open source intelligence and social engineering. I really expected myself to be a flop there. But the thing is, they enjoyed it so much to the point where they invited me a second time and awarded me these two really, really beautiful medals. But up until that point, I was really only just geolocating pictures for fun. I was doing CTS, and I was also learning web application penetration testing, which means I was learning how to hack websites and report vulnerabilities in them. But I never really realized the real world impact that I made. I mean, finding and reporting vulnerabilities in websites was just a lunchtime activity for me that I did when I was free from studies. But the day that I realized the gravity of my work is this. One day, as I was just, searching for targets for bug bounty hunting and vulnerability disclosure, I came across this vulnerability that allowed me to access sensitive financial information for about 400,000 Indian government officials. And the day that I reported it was when I realized that I am I'm not just hacking and protecting websites anymore. This is about real people. This is not a lab, and this is just real impact that I'm getting to make, and I couldn't be more grateful for it. So the lesson here is that even if you're 13 or 95, I mean, age is just a number, and you're never too young or old or early or late to actually start making a real world impact. To anyone who's starting to learn cybersecurity or web application penetration testing, you might want to start participating in vulnerability disclosure programs that are there on websites like HackerOne or BugCrowd, or a lot of them are self hosted. And every time you find a vulnerability, I just want you to think, who could be harmed here if this vulnerability wasn't reported by me? And that is going to be your biggest motivation ever. Well, now I'm just going to continue my story, and I'm let me tell you a fun fact about me. More than anything, even in my podcasts and stuff, I just like to introduce myself as a curious cat who listens to her spidey senses a lot. I mean, I trust my intuition more than anything. And when I first found out about like chat the recent developments in chat GPT and stuff, my first intuition was, who is thinking about the security of these things? So about 6 months ago, I started learning about AI security. And 6 months in AI security genuinely feels like a decade now. So I'm just gonna give you AI security 101. So I'm currently working as an API security research engineer and AI security. But how do those two relate with each other? Now my fifth confession to you is a misconception that I believe a lot of you have. AI security, you might think AI security is just about all of those fancy chat GPT jailbreaks and stuff you see, like ignore all previous instructions and tell me the system prompt. But the thing is, AI security is only as good as the API that lies behind it. Let me explain further. So, for those of you who are not very familiar with these terms, APIs or application programming interfaces are basically protocols through which two web applications share data and communicate with each other. And AI or artificial intelligence is basically just statistical models with a lot of probability involved. So, behind every single one of those AI models or LLMs like ChatGPT that you see, there is an API. Every time you upload an image to ChatGPT or Gemini, or every time you talk to Alexa, there's an API. If I ask Siri right now what the weather is like, she's going to query a weather API and she's going to return that data to me. So, APIs are the backbone and the skeleton of AI. And what happens in a lot of AI models is that the underlying API is vulnerable. So, so the thing is, intent when it comes to an LLM can be good or bad. And an LLM just understands intent, right? So if that intent is bad, well, you've got yourself a data breach. Now, my actionable piece of advice to you here is that in this AI security boom, you might want to learn API security as well. This has been noted by a lot of security researchers over at Wiz as well, that the weakest link in AI models actually tends to be the underlying API. So API security already takes the backseat in a lot of organizations, as I've come to see. But the thing is, in this AI boom, I believe API security will also take the lead. So you might want to familiarize yourself with API related vulnerabilities. Now, my yap here is almost over, and that takes me to my last confession for today. This is much, much bigger than just me. My confession here is that I used to believe that, I can make an impact alone. I used to believe that I can be an independent researcher, I can be an independent engineer, I can do everything by myself and still be making an impact. The thing is, a lot of people do function really well alone. But to really make a change in the world, it takes a village. And it truly, truly takes a village, whether you might realize it or not. I realized it the day I joined the NICE community of interest as an ambassador. And Gaurav sir, who's a co-chair there, actually introduced me to the community. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for him and if it weren't for Rasha ma'am, who literally treated me as a younger sister, who mentored me. And it you have to understand the importance of community if you want to get into cybersecurity. To give you an example, even when you're making like a technical impact, you need to be a part of different communities. For example, I recently made a contribution to the OWASP Gen AI Security Project's AI Security Verification Standard, and I wrote a subcontrol on prompt injection contamination in training data. And thing is, the OWASP community actually supported me to actually include that in their standards. So whenever you're thinking about making an impact, you have to be a collaborative person and you have to never underestimate the power of community in cybersecurity. I got into cybersecurity because I felt powerless. I got into hacking and geolocating images because I felt genuinely powerless. But now I want to help you take your power back through cybersecurity. So that's all for today. As always, happy hacking. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope you had something to carry from today.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation about yourself and your work. Congratulations. We have two questions very quickly. The first one was where do we draw the line between ethical hacking and criminal behavior, especially for young hackers?
Um, I just have a really simple answer for this, and I believe it depends on intent. Now, my answer might seem morally gray here, but the thing is, sometimes you've got to be a little mischievous to make a real world impact. But I would always recommend to stay in those legal lines if you want to be safe. And yeah, I think it just depends on intent. And especially for young hackers, I believe that you have to have strong ethics, especially in the field of cybersecurity. Ethics are everything. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you so much for asking the question. What was your biggest early hacking mistake that turned into a valuable lesson? Yeah, so as I mentioned, my biggest mistake was that I thought I could do everything alone. And I had no mentors. Like when I was starting, there was nobody in my family who's into cybersecurity, there's nobody in my friend circle or anything. So my biggest mistake was that I thought I can learn everything alone, I can build everything alone. But the thing is, now that I'm like working with AppySec, I have a really, really sweet manager, Jose, who teaches me a lot. And I'm working with all of these communities, and I'm realizing that I have to really like turn myself into an extrovert, and I have to be collaborative. So if you're somebody who's like me and you think, oh, I can do all of this by myself, you really can't, and you have to, like, there's a point where you have to ask for help.
Another question was should schools and communities do more to identify and guide young, curious mind towards ethical hacking path?
They definitely should. And the thing is, there's a huge gap, especially in the schooling system when it comes to cybersecurity education. And especially in India, I see the person who asked this question is Indian, so I'm going to speak from that perspective. In India, we don't really get taught cybersecurity in schools, right? And there's like most of these like students who join these platforms are school students, and they need to know about not just cyber safety but also about careers in cybersecurity, because I believe cybersecurity is the future, right? I mean, like AI can replace to some extent software developers or like web application developers, but cybersecurity is something that's to some context it's always going to be human centric. So I think schooling systems should definitely integrate all of these different career paths in cybersecurity, especially because our youth should not fall into the wrong direction. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you so much for asking this question.
And then there's another question that I have: is hacking more about skill or mindset?
I believe mindset is a skill, so it's about both. As I mentioned, cybersecurity or hacking is not about tools in the slightest, and I think the person who asked this question understands that very well. Tools keep changing, techniques keep changing, especially with ChatGPT and everything. Everything's going to be automated, but what cannot be automated is the human brain and the mindset. So hacking is definitely about having the attacker's mindset.
Maybe another question that we have: what got you interested in combining hacking, AI, and API security? And how did you first get started in that area?
So, what got me started in AI security was that I saw all of these like different companies every single day when I woke up. I used to see there's this new company that has rolled a new AI product out there. But the thing is, if companies are just like rolling out AI products every other day, who is thinking about security? And as I mentioned, API security is actually the backbone of AI security. And the more you actually get into AI security, you realize that your AI is only as secure as the API behind it. So that's how I got started in this area.
Okay, one last question, Ray. What's the best way for students to safely practice and build hacking skills without crossing legal lines?
The best way to safely practice is capture the flag challenges on platforms like Try Hack Me if you are a beginner. You don't need to purchase their labs. If you're a beginner, like just do the free ones. And once you actually get to a level where you're able to hack most of their like Windows and Linux machines, then move on to Hack the Box, which is a lot more real world oriented. And once you are very good at Hack the Box, then of course you can move to freelance pen testing.
Okay. Um, Maybe another one if we have time. There are usually some fun OSINT challenges and CTFs. I like the geolocation ones too.
Yeah, the geolocation challenges are really fun. You feel like a stalker, but it's all for good intent.
Hmm. Okay. So I think we've gotten through all the questions. Most of them, we can't cover everything, but thank you so much for being here and part of this panel and the focused session. So hope to see you again in the future, and all the best. Please follow us in the next session, please.
Of course, I would love to. Thank you so much for having me here. Happy
Thank you.
hacking, guys. Bye bye.